Okay, so I'm John McGreevy. This is the island of Hispaniola with Haiti on the left and Dominican Republic on the right. This is going to be a combination of both completed research, completed analysis, and what we're going to do moving forward from this project. So this is a famous picture from National Geographic. You guys might remember it. For some people that have been around longer, it's from 1987, but it pops up all the time when we talk about environmental issues, particularly in the Caribbean, in developing countries, and the difference between that politics can make or different histories on the environment. On the left, we have Haiti. On the right, you have the Dominican Republic. Haiti for a long time has been touted as having 1% to 2% tree cover, and Dominican Republic has been touting having a lot more, and that has a big influence on the tourism in the industry as well as the health of the people and the environment. But is this the whole story is what we're going to start talking about? When we talk about Haiti, is this all of Haiti, or is this just a snippet of a much different picture, a patchy picture? And if that's the case, then so what? So the narrative, which a lot of us in integrative conservation know, is very influential on actions. The big narrative in Haiti is environmentally destroyed almost completely, largely due to the local people. It's their fault, right? And so what? Who cares how we talk about this? Well, the actions of non-governmental organizations, Haiti's been called the Republic of NGOs recently because it has more NGOs than any other country in the world in all of history. And community leaders often respond to these narratives and not actually what's going on if there's a difference between the two. And you can see most recently some of these narratives coming through that don't have any backing at all. A meteorologist saying that after Hurricane Matthew, the children eat the trees, and that's why Haiti is deforested. So this talk that started in 1987 around National Geographic and moved forward from there was around before that, but that really sparked it going, has caused a lot of people to get funding for certain projects, a lot of projects to be done, and people to view Haitians as a certain way compared to their neighbors. And there's more to the problem. When we look at research, recent research using remote sensing, some of this data of 2% tree cover has been thrown out. And now we're saying that was pretty much just something that's been recycled, recited again and again and again. And the estimates are saying that it might be higher. But researchers in Haiti, including myself, are saying, I see a lot of deforestation in the country, so it's not necessarily covered with trees as some people are talking about. So maybe we need to be talking about the country a little bit differently. Is it not just one homogeneous destroyed country, or not some Caribbean paradise at the same time? So my questions are, is Haiti uniformly degraded? Simple enough. And if not, what factors help explain this variation? And then for the application, the strategic communication portion, so what? Where do we go from here with that? So our approach, this past summer, I worked as a part of a team supported by Mark Schuler, who's done a lot of work in Haiti on NGOs, looking at the role of NGOs in the country and also doing side research by myself about the interaction between NGOs and the environment and environmental situation, the portion that I was at. This is presenting some of our findings at the Haitian Studies Association conference in 2016. It's a team of 16 students, student researchers, 8 Haitians, 8 Americans, all research done in Haitian Creole in 8 different villages. But what I'm focusing on is my personal research along with Elkins Voltaire, a colleague from the State University of Haiti. And we both have done research, we figured out after the fact, after we got paired together, in Souchode, a town to the north that's heavily degraded. And then we were together doing research this summer in Camp Perin, both doing semi-structured interviews and participant observation. And then I'm trying to expand myself as a scholar to make myself an interdisciplinary person. So I've started to use some spatial techniques, taken a lot of remote sensing courses, and tried to look at the country from that perspective. So this is the area that we were looking at earlier of that picture. And then this is the difference between the two study sites. So one of my minor arguments here is that the internal variation in Haiti is much larger than the variation that is seen right across the border. And that's something that needs to be taken into account when you're looking at projects that involve replanting the country. If we do a false color infrared, you can see when vegetation is in red, one of the study sites to the north is much more deforested than Camp Perin to the south. And so that deals to question 1, is Haiti uniformly degraded? I would say no. The other, what variables are influencing this? This comes largely from the qualitative side of things. People cite natural variation. There's a lot of different rainfall going on in the north. There's been a 3-year drought, and that is heavily affecting their livelihoods. From that, when people have a drought, they don't have crops, they cut down their trees, they sell them as charcoal, and that's kind of a last resort. It's almost selling the family cow to feed yourself. And then with that, you have more degradation that occurs over time, drying out of soils. It's a cyclical nature. Economic options, there's more livelihood diversity, more sustainable options down here in Camp Marin when compared to Sioux Chode in the north. And then environmental decision making. Who makes the decisions about what trees are cut down, where trees are planted, that sort of thing? In this particular region, it's largely NGOs. They take a lot of photos, they get a lot of funding to basically take control of all the environmental decision making in that part of the region. Whereas here, when we asked about NGOs, they didn't really know what they were. So you have a completely different thing. Is Haiti completely deforested? No. Is Haiti completely run by NGOs? No, at the same time. So, conclusions. The natural variation and human environmental interaction in Haiti is heterogeneous, diverse, and unequal, even though this goes against a lot of the narrative that's been presented since 1987 and beforehand on Haiti. It's funny, if you look at some of the earliest of National Geographic articles talking about Haiti, it's very similar to the ways that we talk about them today. It's hard to tell if it's 1943 or it's 2016 because they're talking about this people that doesn't know how to control their environment, doesn't know how to run themselves, and that's why they have this situation that's going on. We see it's much more complicated than that. Conclusion number 2, this picture is from my study site in the south. 2 months after doing research this summer and finding that it was pretty much a little oasis in the southern portion of Haiti, there was a lot of sustainable livelihoods going on. Hurricane Matthew, tore through the village and destroyed almost everything. And so you have this disproportionate level of vulnerability that I believe, and some of my research has supported, is due largely to the environmental degradation in certain portions of the country, also due to a lot of more specific capacities like disaster preparedness, more general capacities like the infrastructure, and all those combined to make Haiti disproportionately vulnerable. Another example of this would be Hurricane Jeanne in 2004. It killed, I believe, my numbers aren't exact, but you'll get the point, about 4 in Cuba, about 6 in the Dominican Republic, 0 in all the other islands, and 3,000 people in one city in Haiti. And so if you want to look at the vulnerability, I argue that a large part of this, you need to look at the environmental situation in the country as well. Do these trees that are not there in a lot of these areas act as wind buffers, act as buffers against landslide, which is where a lot of the fatalities occur? And so to understand those things, I believe you can't just look at the social, you can't just ask people questions, you can't just look at from far away through the spatial analysis, but the combination of the two can give multiple perspectives. Also, working with a Haitian partner allowed us to have different perspectives on the same problems. So he came from living in Haiti, knowing the Haitian culture. I came from studying in the United States, hearing about Haiti my whole life, and we have different ways of approaching the same thing. So kind of a different type of integration going on. And then lastly, integrative approaches, as I was talking about, kind of foreshadowing here, are some of the best ways to approach this type of problem. Because if you look at this and you have the narrative in your hand of what Haiti is like, and you follow that, it's really easy to see what's going on. Maybe, but you might not see the actual wider picture of the heterogeneity that's going on. And if that is the case, it brings about the so what question. So why care that Haiti is heterogeneous? Because you have a lot of NGOs, non-governmental organizations, and governments vying for money that then they bring to the country and run projects. And a lot of these projects are based on, we planted 100,000 trees, we did this, we did that. They might be different tree species. But if you don't understand the local complexity, the difference between what is actually needed in these different countries, you might not be doing a project that has long-term effectiveness. So, future research needs. Obviously, I didn't control for everything. I provided here 2 cases. Sioux Chode to the north, very degraded, or not necessarily degraded here, but deforested. There's not a lot of tree cover. And then Camp Marin to the south. These are extremes, just kind of to show the range of Haiti, what can go on in the country. More is needed about similar areas, kind of controlling for okay, if this is Camp Perin, what's another place that has a similar rainfall? If we can control for as many variables, maybe we can get at why different places have different amounts of deforestation going on. Rates of change might also be important, and matching that up with historical aspects going on. It's funny, a lot of the blame for deforestation in Haiti, as we talked about earlier, lies heavily on the local resource users that are currently there at the point in time. What I'm going to look at a little bit in my dissertation research is expanding the time frame, the temporal resolution on that, and looking at where some of this deforestation might have occurred. I did some of this in my master's work, and not most of the deforestation, but a lot of deforestation happened when the United States took over the country for 20 years in the 1915, 1920s, 1930s. But you don't really hear about that. That's not publicized in NGOs and things like that. Other thing, applicability of this vulnerability to hurricanes, to look at different hurricanes, like I talked about Hurricane Jean, Hurricane Matthew, and I want to look at maybe this emergency natural resource use of cutting down trees in times of need as a potential indicator for those households that might be particularly vulnerable, that might be at the end of their rope, that might need the most care in the future, or might be able to look at whole communities in that same way. So to look at that from a remote sensing would potentially be a way to be able to assess vulnerable populations without having to go out and interview every household. And that's the idea. So for CNPO, that means thank you very much. Maybe obviously to
we have a couple minutes for questions.
Yeah.
So do you have a sense yet from your remote sensing data if forest cover in Haiti is on the increase? So for instance, did Camp Perin formerly look like the Sioux showed 50 years ago, or is that old growth forest at that site?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The answer would be it's complicated. Which is not a good answer, but there's a lot of researchers, including a guy named Andrew Tarter, who's been really working on studying how, hey, these people don't just cut trees in times of need. There's certain tree species that if you can look at from the air, that they have cycles of planting, cutting down, planting, cutting down, planting, cutting down, that different NGO projects come and they look at and they're like, wow, this is obviously a very degraded environment. But if you look at it at a 10-year time scale, it's a process that they're going through. Sioux showed to the north. I've been looking at what I have from Landsat data, and it goes through cycles of heavy deforestation and then heavy replanting and cycles of that. And my hypothesis is that is largely related to rainfall and how well the crops are doing, because people generally, they understand the value, contrary to popular belief and Waite's talked about, they understand the value of trees. They understand that it's basically a piggy bank system, which they put money into this tree, and then if they need it for future need, they cut it down. And they understand the ecosystem services. So I would say that when they have the time and the resources to do that, there's a lot of replanting that goes on. Yeah. But the problem in Sioux Show currently is that the rate is falling because they've had this 3-year drought, and they have been telling me there's no other option. Thanks.
So just as a follow-up, if I may, so that clear cutting per se is not necessarily the dominant deforestation method. It's
not recently. Yeah, if you look at historically, clear cutting for sugarcane plantations, for things like that are not actually the fault, if you want to get into fault, of the local resource users who are blamed for it, that is historically what led to a lot of the deforestation. Currently, it's more selective harvesting of trees owned by the people or trees that are on common property when it gets more extreme that they cut down.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
We have time for one more question.
Yeah.
So the more textured portrayal that you present, I think, is really interesting and potentially valuable. Have you looked at all about non-academic routes of getting that story out into the popular idea sphere?
Yeah.
For lack of a better term.
That's great, and fortunately that's probably a portion of my icon experience, is having to strategically communicate that. And I would love to, because I'm very interested in the application of that. I've worked with NGOs in the past that have been open to, but have had very little knowledge of the history of environmental degradation in the country. So they come at kind of an idea of what's going on now. You get that picture of what's going on now. That's it. So my idea, what I would like to present, is instead of this model of people putting in for grants for NGOs and money, donations for NGOs to come down and teach local people how important trees are. To be honest, they already know that. Yeah. But instead to switch that teaching to teach NGOs NGOs from the local people have an exchange about what's already been done in the country, what the lived experiences is like. So I would like to see sort of, my idea would be, yeah, switching the flow of information and then making a back and forth thing eventually. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.